Listen and practice. Alex often sat in silence, observing others effortlessly converse in English, a language that felt like an insurmountable mountain. Their heart ached with the desire to speak, to join in the lively discussions, but a paralyzing fear of making mistakes always held them captive. Every attempt felt like a stumble, reinforcing the belief that they were simply not good enough to master it. The phrase, "How make confidence in speaking," echoed in their mind daily, a desperate plea for a solution. They devoured countless articles, watched endless videos, yet the actual act of opening their mouth and producing coherent English felt like lifting an impossible weight. The frustration mounted with each passing day. Alex's "my daily day's struggle" was a constant internal battle. They knew the vocabulary, understood the grammar rules, but transferring that knowledge into fluid conversation seemed an alien concept. The words would simply vanish, leaving behind an awkward, embarrassing silence. This pattern repeated itself relentlessly. Then, one quiet evening, while browsing a dusty shelf, Alex stumbled upon an old collection of simple English story reading books. The idea wasn't new, but this time, something felt different. Perhaps immersing themselves in narratives, rather than just isolated sentences, could spark a change. They began with short, engaging tales, reading aloud, albeit hesitantly at first. The rhythm of the sentences, the flow of the plot, started to sink in. This gentle introduction to language in context felt less intimidating than direct conversation. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift. A crucial piece of advice kept reappearing: why you must listen. Alex had always thought listening was passive, but now they understood its active role. They started consciously absorbing podcasts, movies, and conversations, not just hearing, but truly listening for pronunciation and intonation. This dedicated "listen and practice" approach became the cornerstone of their new routine. Hours were spent with headphones, meticulously imitating native speakers, repeating phrases until their tongue felt less clumsy. It was tiring, but a tiny flicker of hope began to ignite within them. The next brave step was how to talk at home to yourself. It felt utterly silly at first, like having an imaginary friend, but Alex was desperate. They would narrate their day, describe objects, and even argue with themselves in English, free from judgment. These solo conversations, though awkward, were liberating. They allowed Alex to experiment with sentence structures, to fumble and restart without shame. It was a safe space for their voice to develop, to discover its own unique cadence without external pressure. Why I always make mistakes was a question that plagued Alex, even during self-talk. They realized that mistakes were an inevitable part of learning, not a sign of failure. This new perspective began to chip away at the deep-seated fear that had paralyzed them for so long. Their English study plan for talking started taking shape. It wasn't just about grammar drills anymore. It incorporated active listening, extensive story reading, and crucially, dedicated periods for talking, even if it was only to their reflection in the mirror. They meticulously planned their study hours, allocating specific time slots for each activity. Monday, listen to podcasts and summarize aloud. Tuesday, read an English story and record themselves reading. Wednesday, practice talking about daily events. The structure brought discipline. The daily struggle slowly transformed into a daily grind, but a productive one. Alex started noticing subtle improvements. Words flowed a little easier, sentences formed with less hesitation. The small victories fueled their determination to continue. English story reading became more than just a task, it became a pleasure. The characters and plots provided a rich context for new vocabulary and idiomatic expressions. Alex found themselves visualizing the scenes and even thinking in English while reading. The power of how to talk at home to yourself truly surprised them. Imaginary conversations became more elaborate, allowing for practice in various scenarios, ordering food, asking for directions, even debating complex topics. It was uninhibited practice. Alex discovered that the consistent act of listening improved their accent and intonation significantly. They began to mimic the natural rhythm of English speakers, which made their own speech sound more authentic and less forced, boosting confidence. Understanding why I always make mistakes became a superpower. Instead of shame, mistakes became data points for improvement. Each error was an opportunity to learn, to reevaluate, and to refine their understanding of the language's nuances. The English study plane for talking was flexible yet structured. It allowed for experimentation, for detours into interesting topics, and for revisiting challenging areas. This personalized approach kept motivation high and learning engaging. Slowly, tentatively, Alex started applying their newfound skills in real-life situations. The first time they ordered coffee in English without stuttering felt like a monumental triumph, a tiny crack appearing in the wall of their fear. The initial conversations were still fraught with anxiety, but the consistent listen and practice routine had laid a solid foundation. They could now understand more, and understanding reduced the panic of not knowing what to say. How to talk to anyone in English seemed less daunting now. Alex realized that genuine connection was more important than perfect grammar. People responded positively to their effort and willingness to communicate, even with small imperfections. The fear of judgment began to fade. Alex understood that most native speakers were encouraging and patient, appreciative of anyone making an effort to learn their language. This realization was incredibly liberating. Their "my daily day's struggle" slowly transformed into daily progress. The internal monologue of doubt was replaced by a quiet confidence. Each successful interaction, no matter how small, reinforced their growing belief in themselves. The journey was not without its bumps. There were still days of frustration, moments where old fears resurfaced. But Alex had developed resilience, an understanding that progress wasn't linear, but a continuous upward spiral. They recognized that "why you must listen" was not just about input, but about truly internalizing the sounds and patterns of English. It was about developing an ear for the language, which in turn informed their own speaking. The constant exposure through English story reading expanded their vocabulary organically. Words and phrases acquired through stories were easier to remember and recall in conversation because they were associated with a narrative. The strategic English study plane for talking included recording themselves speaking and then listening back. This critical self-assessment helped them identify areas for improvement in pronunciation and fluency that they wouldn't notice otherwise. How to improve your fluency was no longer a mysterious concept. It became a clear, actionable path. It involved consistent practice, embracing mistakes, and actively seeking opportunities to use the language in real-world contexts. Alex's confidence in speaking grew exponentially. They no longer hesitated to initiate conversations or participate in group discussions. The initial awkwardness had given way to a natural flow of words and ideas. The ability to how to talk to anyone in English felt exhilarating. They found joy in connecting with people from diverse backgrounds, sharing thoughts, and understanding different perspectives, all thanks to their improved English skills. The "my daily days struggle" shifted from a fight against themselves to a pleasant challenge of continuous learning. Each day presented new opportunities to refine their language skills and push their boundaries further. Alex became an advocate for the power of listen and practice. They often shared their journey, emphasizing that consistent exposure and active imitation were fundamental keys to unlocking one's speaking potential. The initial shame associated with "why I always make mistakes" was entirely gone. Alex now embraced errors as stepping stones, a natural and essential part of the learning process that actually propelled them forward. Their English study plan for talking became a living document, evolving as their needs changed. It was never rigid but adaptable, ensuring that learning remained dynamic and responsive to their progress. The simple act of how to talk at home to yourself transformed their relationship with the language. It made English feel less like a foreign entity and more like an extension of their own thoughts and personality. They realized that fluency wasn't about speaking fast, but about speaking smoothly and confidently, conveying meaning without excessive pauses or fumbling. This subtle shift in understanding was crucial for their progress. How to improve your fluency involved not just speaking, but also expanding their range of expression. They consciously worked on using more varied vocabulary and complex sentence structures to sound more natural. The role of English story reading extended beyond vocabulary. It helped them internalize sentence patterns, understand cultural nuances, and develop a more intuitive grasp of the language's natural flow and rhythm. "Why You Must Listen" resonated deeply with Alex's success. They understood that speaking was an output driven by quality input. The more they listened, the richer their internal language database became. Their advice to others struggling with how make confidence in speaking was always the same: start small, be consistent, and be kind to yourself. Focus on progress, not perfection, and the confidence will follow. Alex's transformation was a testament to perseverance and strategic learning. They had built their confidence brick by brick, through diligent practice and a willingness to step outside their comfort zone. The journey from silent struggle to confident communication was a profound one. It wasn't just about learning a language. It was about overcoming personal fears and discovering an inner strength they never knew existed. They often reflected on the initial days of "my daily days struggle," marveling at how far they had come. The mountain of English speaking now seemed like a familiar hill, easily navigable with the right tools. The continuous loop of listen and practice became second nature. It wasn't a chore, but an enjoyable part of their daily routine, a constant opportunity to refine and deepen their linguistic abilities. How to talk to anyone in English was no longer a distant dream but a daily reality. Alex engaged in conversations effortlessly, discussing a wide range of topics, both personal and professional. The fear of "why I always make mistakes" had completely dissipated. They understood that mistakes were not a reflection of intelligence, but merely guideposts on the road to mastery, a vital part of growth. Their robust English study plan for talking proved its worth. It provided a structured yet flexible framework that allowed for consistent improvement without feeling overwhelming or monotonous. How to improve your fluency was an ongoing process, but now Alex approached it with excitement rather than dread. Each new phrase learned, each new conversation, was a step towards greater mastery. The power of how to talk at home to yourself couldn't be overstated. It was the safe laboratory where their English voice was forged, allowing them to make countless mistakes without public embarrassment. Alex's story became an inspiration, a living example of how dedication to listen and practice, combined with self-compassion, can transform anyone's ability to communicate confidently in English. They proved that confidence isn't innate, it's built through consistent effort and a willingness to be vulnerable. Every shy sentence spoken at home contributed to the bold statements made in public. Why You Must Listen truly was the unsung hero. It provided the mental blueprint for correct pronunciation and natural rhythm, which are indispensable for sounding fluent and being understood clearly. The rich input from English story reading made their vocabulary vibrant and expressive. It wasn't just about knowing words, but understanding their usage in context, making their speech more nuanced. Ultimately, Alex's journey demonstrated that conquering how make confidence in speaking requires a holistic approach, blending passive consumption with active production, always guided by patience and persistence. Their success wasn't magic, it was the result of a deliberate, step-by-step process, turning daily struggles into achievable goals, and transforming their quiet desire into a powerful, confident English voice.